Well, welcome to our Lunch and Learn for April. We are so glad to see so many beautiful faces and so many beautiful names popping up on our screen. We are thrilled that you made the effort to be with us this hour. And we really believe that this topic, the topic of mental illness, is so important. And so we are just excited to bring this topic and believe that there'll be something here for everybody, some wisdom for everybody. My name is Amy Cedrone, and I am the National Director here at the Polished Network. And I want to just mention to you that if you have questions for our speaker, Rebecca Carrell, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. We would love to bring those to her. We won't probably get to every one of them, but we would love it for this to be an interactive time. And before we get started, we do have a few announcements to make. So I want to throw that over to our Executive Director, Dr. Joy Dahl.
Hi, ladies. We are so excited that you're here with us today. As Amy said, I am Executive Director of Polished Network, and we have a lot going on at Polished right now. We want to make sure you know all about it. Please go to our website, polishedonline.org. Check out what's new. Today, we welcome our dear friend, the amazing Rebecca Carrell. Following her presentation, we're going to have our Ask Me Anything session where Rebecca is going to answer your questions on any topic. These Ask Me Anything sessions. These are normally members only segments, but today everyone on Zoom is going to be invited to stay and get a glimpse of what our network members experience. If you're interested in becoming a member of Polished, you can go to polishedonline.org. In the top right, hit the Lunch and Learn, and you'll find more information. We would love for you to join us. So here are a few other announcements. For those who are new to the Polished Network, we gather women to navigate the workplace and explore faith together in authentic community. And one way we experience authentic community is through our chapters. You can go on our website, find out more information about a chapter near you. And if you can't find a chapter near you, we want to talk to you about starting a chapter. We would love for you to come into the Polished family. Also, this month, we are celebrating our theme of what it means to stand strong with single women in the workplace. We're offering a free video interview. A dear friend of ours, Executive Pastor Joanne Hummel, is in her doctoral program, and her research focuses on single women in top-level leadership. We got a preview of that yesterday at our North Dallas location, and we would love to send this to you. So again, become a member, and this download is on its way. Our theme for next month in May turns to mental health. May is mental health awareness, and this is why we asked Rebecca Carrell to come today so that we can start preparing for next month when we focus on mental health for female leaders. In June, we'll meet back here again for another Lunch and Learn, and we'll be focusing on the importance of women mentoring women in the workplace. So we have a lot coming your way. And did you know that we have a Polished podcast? Our co-founder, author, speaker, Bible teacher, Kat Armstrong, interviews women about how God has intersected their lives and how he is impacting their faith journey through work. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And there is a link on our website, again, polishedonline.org, and hit the podcast link. Finally, if you want to reach us, we would love to hear from you. You can find our contact information on the website or check us out on social media. Facebook, we're at polishedonline.network. Instagram, we're at polished.online. We cannot wait to connect with you, and thank you so much for being here today.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, I just want to jump right in, and I have Rebecca's bio, and I'm going to read it because it is so beautiful. We are privileged to have Rebecca Carrell with us. Rebecca Carrell is, in order of importance, a joyful Jesus follower, wife to Mike, mother to Caitlin and Nick, morning show co-host in Dallas-Fort Worth on 90.9 KCBI, conference speaker, and author of Holy Jelly Beans, Finding God Through Everyday Things, and Holy Hiking Boots, When God Makes the Ordinary Extraordinary. She also hosts the Honest Conversations, looking at tough topics through a biblical lens podcast. Rebecca began her broadcasting career in country music. I love that. In 1998, And in 2011, she moved to Christian radio station 90.9 KCBI. And in 2016, she founded Heart Strong Faith, the women's ministry events branch of KCBI. You should check it out. It's awesome. Additionally, Rebecca has an empathetic heart for those who experience mental illness and weaves her own journey with mental illness into the wisdom that she shares on this topic, which is why we invited her here today. Rebecca is also working towards her Master of Theology degree at Dallas Theological Seminary. So, Rebecca, take it away.
My bio makes me tired. I've got to shave some of that off. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really honored to be here. So thank you for having me, and thank you for attending. Polished Ministries is a wonderful, wonderful network, and just has my highest recommendation if you're looking for community and fellowship as a woman in the professional realm. So today we're talking about mental health. And before we dive in, I thought it would be appropriate if I shared some of my experience with you. So I come from a long line of mental illness. It runs far, far back, and including in my family of origin. And I didn't know that until I think I was in my late 30s. So I went for the majority of my life struggling with mental illness, but not really knowing, first of all, that it was even a thing. And second of all, that it's something that's passed down through generations. So it's a part of my testimony that's just part of who I am. And I started to struggle in 6th or 7th grade. It began in 6th grade, but by the time I hit 7th grade, it was pretty much in full swing. And it didn't help that my family moved every 3 years. So my dad would get a promotion and then we would move, and it was always across the country. And so every 3 years I was trying to fit in and trying to figure out the new cultural norms and, navigate middle school and high school, which is difficult anyway. But what I suffered from was anxiety. And by the time I finally got diagnosed, the official diagnosis was severe clinical generalized anxiety. It affected my every waking moment. There was never a moment that I was not anxious unless I was drinking. I started drinking at 13 years of age. And when I was discussing, my mental health with my doctor's the one that said, well, that's probably when you started to struggle because, you were self-medicating. And what I didn't know at the time was that over 90% of people who have an addiction or an addictive behavior are self-medicating an underlying mental condition. It might be a full-blown mental illness. It just might be some struggles you have, but typically addictive behavior is a symptom of something greater underneath. And so that's another reason why I think this is just really important to talk about, because there are so many misconceptions surrounding it. So by the time I graduated from college, I was a full-blown alcoholic. And by the time, and things just continued to escalate until 2009. 2009 was my bottoming out year. And that was the year where I found myself with every goal I had set for myself achieved. I wanted to be married. Big goals. And I was married. I wanted 2 kids. I was hoping for a girl and a boy. I had a girl and a boy. They were 14 months apart. I wanted to sing on the praise team at my church. I was doing that. I wanted to be on a morning show. I was on a morning show in Dallas, Fort Worth. And our morning show on our radio station was performing very, very well. We had just won a really prestigious award. And so I had everything that I wanted. But one day I found myself cleaning out the pantry. Our kids were napping and my husband was in the garage. And I reached up onto that top shelf and my hands closed around a bottle, and I took it down and looked at it. And it was a bottle of hydrocodone from a shoulder injury that I had a couple months ago. And I stood on that chair in my pantry holding that bottle for 5 or 10 minutes, just thinking I can go upstairs and lock the door and take every single pill in this bottle and just end it. That is how bad my anxiety was. It was relentless, and it really impeded my ability to function and certainly my ability to thrive. And so what I did was I went into the garage and I handed the bottle to my husband and I said, I can't be trusted with this. And so we set about putting things in place to get me some help, and I did. And my help includes a psychiatrist, a therapist, and a medication regime. And then it was that year as well that when we started treating the mental illness that I also experienced relief from my addiction, although that is a different story. So what I want to do now is I want to share my screen with you, and we're just going to talk about some of the basics of mental health. It's really, really important that you know that I am not a counselor and that I am not a doctor, but I am sharing with you from my own experience and things that I have picked up along the way from talking to my doctors and my therapists. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a basic definition. We're just going to ask, what is mental illness? And as soon as I can get my slide to change, we will talk about that. Mental illness refers to, and this is according to the Mayo Clinic, a wide range of mental health conditions, disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. And there are 5 major categories. And the categories are mood disorders, anxiety disorders. And some of the symptoms of anxiety include panic attacks, physical symptoms like pain, nausea, headaches, nightmares, obsessive thoughts, fear of leaving the house. Some of the different kinds of anxiety disorders are panic disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise known as PTSD, and social phobias, and also generalized anxiety disorders. Then your next category is the mood disorders, and the most common of those are bipolar disorder and depression. Then you have schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders, dementia, and then eating disorders. So for our purposes today, we're going to stick to the 2 most common types of mental health issues, and those are anxiety and depression. So now we have to ask ourselves, why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because we can't afford not to. So suicide is the second leading cause of death between Americans aged 10 to 34. And it's also the 10th leading cause of death in the US. 1 out of every 6 youths in America are experiencing mental distress right now. 1 out of 6. That is an incredibly high number. More than 70% of youths in the juvenile justice system have a diagnosed mental health disorder. In late June, this is June 2020, 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance abuse. So that is a staggering number. That has skyrocketed. And these are the people who are reporting it. So you have to figure that the number is actually higher than that. This is kind of a troubling statistic. The average delay the average delay between the onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment is 11 years. And so now we have to ask ourselves, why are people waiting so long to talk about it? Well, I think that we misunderstand the concept of mental illness. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about today. So this is a human brain. The average adult woman's brain weighs 1,198 grams, or just over 2.5 pounds. Now, the brain, I think we can all agree, is a physical thing that takes up physical space. This is a molecule of serotonin. And for the chemists among us, of which I am not one, its molecular formula, as you can see, is C10H12N2O. It's made of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. Its molecular weight is 176.21 grams per mole. What I want you to see is that serotonin is a physical thing that takes up physical space. Serotonin is the key hormone that stabilizes our mood, our feelings of well-being, and our happiness. This hormone actually impacts your entire body. It enables your brain cells and other nervous system cells to communicate with each other. And serotonin also helps with sleeping, eating, and digestion. Now, this is a molecule of adrenaline. Its molecular formula is C9H13NO3. And you will notice that adrenaline is also made up of hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen and carbon. Adrenaline has a molecular weight of 183.204 grams per mole. I am showing you this to show you that adrenaline is a physical thing that takes up physical space. Now, when you face stress or danger, your body reacts to that physiologically. Your brain tells your body to produce adrenaline, and almost instantaneously, your heart races, your hands start to sweat, and you start looking for an escape. And that's because adrenaline triggers your fight or flight response. Last but not least, this is a picture of dopamine. Its molecular formula is C8H11NO2, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. And dopamine has a molecular weight of 153.18 grams per mole. It is a physical thing that takes up physical space. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. So what dopamine does is it carries messages from one place in your brain to another. And it's also the chemical that mediates pleasure in your brain. And so when you experience something pleasurable, like eating or sex or Twitter likes, being totally serious, your body releases dopamine. And dopamine also plays a role in movement, memory, behavior, and cognition, as well as attention, sleep, mood, and learning. So, what I want you to take away from this is that dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline are physical things in your body. They operate in your brain. And when any of these chemicals are out of whack, you are going to experience anxiety, depression, or a whole host of other mood disorders. So, is mental illness this abstract thing that just sort of exists in your mind but isn't real? No, mental illness is physical illness. And we do not have a stigma when someone has diabetes. We do not look at someone differently when they have cancer. Why? Because those are physical illnesses that happen in the physical realm, and everybody knows you can't help it. So, what we need to do is we need to start understanding mental illness as a physical illness because it occurs because of physical things going on in your physical brain. All right. So, mental struggles and mental illnesses, for a large part, are not something that we have a whole lot of control over. But in order to get help, what we need to do first is we need to understand what kind of mental struggle are we having? Are we having? Are we experiencing circumstantial or chemical anxiety or depression? So circumstantial anxiety and circumstantial depression are exactly what they sound like they are. You go through something like, oh, I don't know, a global pandemic, and you lose your job, and all of a sudden you are having the appropriate human response, which is anxiety. You are in a situation that is stressful and your body is responding accordingly. It is not a pleasant response, but it is a normal response. Or you lose a loved one, a spouse, a child, a parent, a friend, and your body responds appropriately. Your dopamine is suppressed. You don't want to get out of bed. You are grieving and you are mourning, and it's not a pleasant experience, but it is a normal human experience. So that is not a cause for alarm. Should you get help if you are experiencing normal circumstantial anxiety or normal circumstantial depression? Yeah, that's why we have support groups. That's why we have counselors. This is where talk therapy really, really helps you get an objective look at your circumstances so that you can navigate them well. But when we are talking about a chemical imbalance, which is something that takes place in your brain and is out of your control, if it has been going on for 2 months, it's time to see a doctor. If you notice that your child or your spouse no longer likes to do the things that you know they love to do, or if you notice changes in their eating and sleeping habits and there's nothing you can pin it on, that's when it's time to see a doctor. And here is what I recommend. And this is straight from a psychiatrist's mouth, okay? So it's not just Rebecca. If you are having migraines, you are going to see a neurologist. If you are having knee problems, you are going to see an orthopedic specialist. If you are having brain problems, if you are having mood problems, you need to see a doctor that specializes in nothing but brain, where all their continuing education is just brain. You really need to see a psychiatrist. And we have got to take the stigma off of that, because they are exactly the same as a neurologist. They are exactly the same as an orthopedic specialist. They just so happen to specialize in the brain. Now, remember our statistic that it's usually an 11-year span between mental struggles and effective treatment. So, a big piece of that is that people are going to general practitioners who do not study the brain and who are not trained in a way that specialists are trained to diagnose brain or mood disorders. They have no responsibility to be keeping up on the latest trends and advancements in psychiatric medicine. And so that's why, with everything in me, I recommend that if you are struggling with something that has to do with the brain, you see a doctor who specializes in the brain. So now what I want to do is I want to talk about some of the big lies surrounding mental illness, because there's a whole lot of misinformation out there. And sometimes when it comes to mental health, we are our own worst enemies. So lie number one hit me in the face in 2009 when my husband sat me down and very lovingly said to me, "I need you to know that you are not the only one who is affected by your anxiety." Lie number one, I am the only one affected by my mental struggles. And I am not saying this to guilt you. I am not saying this to guilt you. I am saying this to reiterate how important it is to get help for something when you cannot help yourself. I grew up in a household where a person in my family of origin struggled with and still struggles with bipolar 2 disorder. And I will tell you, it affected every single person in our family, and those effects have been long lasting. And so when your kids see you depressed, that scares them. And when your spouse can't help you navigate through what you're going through, it's stressful. Here's the truth. Your mental health affects everyone around you, and the people you work with and the people you love the most are also paying a small price. But that is not a reason to feel shame. That is a reason to be proactive. Line number two is this: I'll snap out of it eventually. I'll get over it. If you know that what you are going through is circumstantial anxiety or circumstantial depression, if you can pinpoint what's going on in your life to an event. For me right now, it's April. I'm in seminary. I'm taking 2 classes. I knew it was a bad idea. It was. And here I am. I've got finals and I've got papers and I've got so many things going on, and a job and a family and a speaking calendar. So yeah, I'm anxious, and it's normal. That is the normal, appropriate human response. And guess what's going to happen on May 6th when I turn that last paper in? I'm going to snap out of it. I'm going to snap out of it because what I'm going through right now is circumstantial anxiety. However, if what you are going through has been persisting for 2 months or longer and you cannot pinpoint it to an event, you will not just snap out of it, not if it's your brain chemistry. And the truth is that mental illnesses, when they go undiagnosed and untreated, only tend to get worse. They don't tend to get better. And many times they lead to addiction. I already mentioned earlier that, I struggled with alcoholism from 13 to 35. And the biggest piece of that is that I was self-medicating myself. And so when people live with untreated mental pain, it is not unusual at all that they turn to drugs or alcohol or pornography or sex or shopping or any other of a number of bad habits. So if it's been 2 months and it's not going away, then what I need to say to you with all the love in my heart and all the compassion I can muster is that you are choosing to struggle. You are choosing to struggle by refusing to see a doctor. And there are a lot of things in life where if you are diagnosed with something, it's just going to be a struggle. Mental illness is not one of those things. I have been managing my mental illness beautifully with my team for 11 years. Okay, lie number 3. If I get help, people will think I'm weak. Okay, first of all, who cares? Who cares? Who cares what they think? You have nothing to prove. And second of all, research tells us that 40% of adult US Americans right now are dealing with some kind of mental illness or mental struggle. So you are not alone. But here's the truth: weak people live in fear of what other people think. Wise people do what they need to do to thrive. Weak people live in fear of what other people think. Wise people do what they need to do to thrive and so that they can be their healthiest self. I will tell you quite frankly that what I'm talking about today is really not my wheelhouse. I just speak from an entire life of experience growing up with someone in my family who has bipolar 2 and then struggling it with myself. I've got so many people in my life who struggle with mental illness. Most of them are in my family, but I am a Bible teacher and I'm a broadcaster. So really, I just want to tell people about Jesus and I want to teach them how to read their Bibles. But this is what I'm asked to talk about over and over and over again. And it's because so many people are suffering. And you cannot effectively live out your purpose if you are suffering and if you are refusing to get help. And I will tell you, I am not ashamed of my background. I'm really not. I am not ashamed that I come from a long line of people who struggle with mental illness. I'm very proud that I come from a long line of people who recognize when they are in over their head and they can't do it by themselves and they need some help. And so, I still have 3 minutes to go before we open it up to questions. I will address one thing because in church circles, you perhaps have been taught that it's a sin to worry. And I just want to tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. That is a misunderstanding of Philippians 4, verse 6, where it says, be not anxious for anything, but instead in everything with prayer and supplication, give thanks to God. Paul, the Apostle Paul, who wrote that, is not commanding you not to worry. He is pleading with you. That verb is in the imperative mood, and it is the mood of pleading. It is the mood of prayer language. And what Paul is doing is speaking to the believers in Philippi as though he were their father and encouraging them that, look, even though everything is spinning all around you and it looks like everything's going crazy, God is in control and he's got this. And I think it's nothing short of a miracle that you and I live in a day and age where help is so readily available. And medicine is a miracle. You cannot convince me that someone has found a property that exists in nature and they can take it back to a lab and they can modify it and put it in a capsule and it knows exactly where to go in your body to treat one specific thing. To me, that is that's a common grace that God has given to us. That is a good gift of grace. And so I'm happy to answer any and all of your questions. I think it is 12:29. So Dr. Dahl, whenever you are ready, we can open it up.
Oh, Rebecca, thank you so much. I've been sitting here taking notes, and this has just been an incredible message. And one thing that I just so appreciate is that it's not just understanding the lies, but it's what the truth says. That's what we need to be holding on to. And the perspective that this is something that is physical, that this is a physical reaction. And obviously there are different ways our body is responding. I think most, if not everyone on this call has been struggling over the past year plus. We're in a pandemic. This is a crazy time. We're all experiencing loss of normal life, loss of dreams, loss for some of us of family members. I mean, it's just been so hard. But I love what you said, that help is available. and that sometimes that help may be in talk therapy and coming alongside your sisters. And sometimes we really do need to find a professional who knows our brain, who knows what we're going through and can bring us to that next level of help. So Rebecca, thank you so much for an incredible message. I can't wait for us to get into our Ask Me Anything time. Before we jump into that, I do just want to take a moment to share what we believe here at Polish. We believe in what we call the big story of the Bible. And that's part of what Rebecca was talking about, that God is in control. In the beginning, God made something good. And unfortunately, we mess it up. We do live in a fallen world. And right now we live in a very difficult time. But God sent his son, Jesus, to come and fix things. He lived, he died, he rose again, and one day he will come back and he's going to make everything right. But we're living in that in-between time when things can be hard. And that is why we need each other. So we're so thankful that you joined us today. For those of you on Facebook Live, well, I'm going to let Amy actually take the next step and then take us into the Ask Me Anything time. But I just want to say to everyone on our call, thank you for being here. And Rebecca, thank you for your willingness to share with us and trust us with your story. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And before you guys, we have a few things before we go into our Ask Me Anything segment. And I do want to just share that if you loved what you saw today, we really hope that you'll join us in June for our next Lunch and Learn. That's actually going to be on June 17th. It's at noon Central Time. And we will have Executive Director of Bible Study Fellowship, BSF, Susie Rowan, joining us. And she is going to be sharing about what this means to mentor women in the workplace. We think mentoring is so important. So we hope that you'll join us. Go ahead and register. And if you want to be a part of this exclusive Ask Me Anything section where you get a one-on-one, in just a minute, we're going to have a one-on-one with Rebecca Carrell. If you want to be a part of that, we are asking you to go online to polishedonline.org/lunch and learn. We're going to put it in the chat so you'll have it, and join us, become a member, a network member, so that you can have access to these wonderful, top-notch, beautiful, smart, wise speakers that we have. So please to do that. Thank you to everyone who joined us on Facebook today. We hope you enjoyed it so much that you will want to become a member. So jump online and do that.